Greetings, family. This is Kyle Dixon, co-founder of Precise Minds Filmworks, educator for 20 plus years, cultural enthusiast.
And I'm KAYODE Bentley, president and founder of 4T's Teaching Teens to Think, whose mission is to help inner city youth identify their inherent skill sets in order to complete their education, establish a career, and ultimately start a business, if they choose to. Professor at Fordham University, where I teach students who are pursuing their master's degree in social justice.
And with that said, welcome to the Grand Rising Collective, a podcast whose purpose is to cultivate greatness and excellence within ourselves and our communities. The name itself is from the morning greeting of Grand Rising, which we interpret as starting off the day with a greatness mindset so that we are able to rise to the occasion of whatever obstacles and challenges we may face.
And that's why we focus on engagement, relevant information, and empowerment for people in our communities who want to be and do better in their daily lives.
Welcome to the Grand Rising Collective. Greetings, family. This is Kyle Dixon here, and we have my co-host with the most, KAYODE Bentley, here as well with you all again for another episode of the Grand Rising Collective. Now, what's interesting about this one, fam, this is a special one right here. We've never done this before. This is a first time event that we're doing today. All right, we've never had a family members on in the scope of the podcast exists. We've never had two family members on, and not only are they family members, but siblings, right? Brother, sister, right? So we had the older sister on, Trudy Hanna. So now we have her brother, who is also a microbiologist / entrepreneur, Mr. Samuel James Hanna. James, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the introduction, Kyle. Thank you for having me on. So I'm definitely looking forward to this.
Definitely, brother. Yeah, man, we're looking forward to this, family. Just trust me, family. It's a lot we got to go over, but it's definitely going to be impactful for you all. Trust, all right? So as you will see, it runs in the family, okay? It runs. So James, brother, tell us in the family just about your background, because I know Trudy talked about it, coming up. I believe you were down south, correct me if I'm wrong. And she said, now I'm paraphrasing. She said she influenced you in reference of getting into science, but just tell me about your own personal, story.
Okay, I can I can give you my background, and I'll make sure to loop in her influence on me. Sometimes I blame her for this path. But so I am from South Carolina, a small town called Florence, South Carolina. Of course, my sister Trudy that you talked with before, she's my older sister. So I'm the youngest of 4 children, and I'm the only boy. So definitely very interesting times growing up in the rural South. When it comes to science, or at least I guess my first introduction, there's a lot of people that have had influence on me throughout the years. Probably the first was a family friend. He was a doctor, and my dad used to take me by his practice and stuff. And, he used to, every time I would go to his practice, I always looked at a model of the human heart. And I always, so one day he gave it to me, to me, that was like the best gift ever. So I was about 6 years old. So I used to spend probably every day I come home from school, and I used to study all the little diagrams on it, trying to figure out how to say the words. I finally figured out how to say ventricles, things like that. So, that was probably one of the earliest influences. I like to say my parents as well. Of course, they had influence on me, always challenging me to always think outside the box, always ask questions, always be curious about the world around you, and so things like that. And always, I guess to try to analyze your environment. Of course, and then like you said, you have my sister Trudy, who came in there. She's about 13 years older than I am. So by the time I got into grade school, I think she was already in college. And so she would come home, and she would bring home some of her science experiments. And I thought they were the coolest things. She would bring like the pigs they were dissecting, or if they had fruit flies, or just whatever science experiment they had going on. So I always thought that was cool. I always thought, Trudy, I guess as a younger kid, I was just so amazed by her when she would come home from college, and she always brings some cool science experiment for me to, I guess, play with or I guess engage with. And then I always thought she was cool. So she would take me on some, like even when they would, I guess her class would have field trips, she would take me with her class. So I'd be like, I was probably like 8 years old. I was going with a whole bunch of college students out. I don't know if she was in a marine biology class or something, but we were out in the ocean and doing all that stuff. So so Trudy really did put a lot of effort in regards to influencing me with the sciences. It's actually funny. She and I, like I said, I like to blame her for the microbiology part of this, because probably when I was around 12, I did a science experiment where I had to, I had a science experiment where I wanted to determine which was better, hand sanitizers or hand washing. So again, with Trudy, she helped me make an incubator. I'm sorry, she made me make an incubator in my room, and she got some. I don't know where she got the petri dishes from with that, but she got the petri dishes, and so she helped me make an incubator in my room, and I sat there in my room, which I look back at it now, and that was totally not safe. But I look at it now, and I cultured a whole bunch of bacteria in my room, and she helped me design this experiment for my science fair project, where pretty much I determined, so I got scientifically valid data, and I was able to determine that hand washing is better than hand sanitizers. And this was back in 1996, 97. So I was able to determine that. So I like to blame her because she put me on this path of becoming a microbiologist, because that was my first introduction to microbiology. So from there, of course, I continue on to school. I still maintain that love for science. I went on to college, majored in biology at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I had influences there that really helped me continue on with the field of science and things. And of course, I had my family, and friends and stuff like that, definitely encouraged me along the way. And then, after I graduated, work started going out to the industry. Didn't really know where I wanted to work within the field of science. Really didn't know if I really could work in the field of science. After finding my footing, I was able to at least, identify that I definitely do want to be a microbiologist. Then I went back to school and got my master's in epidemiological studies from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So from there, I continued on, and now I'm working as a senior microbiologist for a global chemical company. So,
wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
There's quite a few things there. Yeah.
So many gems in it. Wow.
I have there's two questions that I want to ask, but I'm gonna prioritize them and just choose one. You said you didn't know if you could work in the field of science. Why did you feel that way?
Interesting question. So I think a lot of it had to do with confidence. Even though I've always done pretty well in school and stuff, there's always, I have to thank Trudy, because she would introduce me. She made a very concerted effort throughout the years. When she was in the early part of her career, she would always take me into the labs that she was working in, stuff, and, really help me feel comfortable with it. But, there's not really a lot of people that look like myself that are in that particular field. So it's really just trying to understand, like, okay, do I have the capabilities to be in this career, and can I succeed at it? Because when you're in the classes, the classes, they're diverse, but then the diversity, you put one person in with a room of 100 people, and you call it diverse all of a sudden. Well, I guess technically it is, but it's very minimal. So it was just really trying to deal with that. I was thankful. I do have a professor. I have to be thankful for him. He was actually my African American histories professor in college. He actually helped push me into the Ronald E. McNair undergraduate research program. I was actually during that time still dealing with self-esteem, not really knowing, I'm majoring in this field, but I'm not sure, can I really go into this field? Can I really contribute to this field?
Mhm.
And he, really took the time to really talk to me and really encourage me to go forth, and definitely give it a shot and reach out to professors and things like that, and see if I can become, I guess, see if I can get sponsored by professors so I can take part in that research program. So, he pushed me. I was able to get into the research program. That gave me my first introduction to actual hands-on laboratory work outside of what I was just reading in books, and that really started the wheels going when it comes to establish my confidence level that, okay, yeah, I can, from there. And then, like I said, as I went out to the workforce, it was really, I graduated during a recession, it was tough. Everybody, I was definitely entry level. They were hiring PhDs for basic level science jobs,
Wow.
like that. So, it was just, really just trying to figure that out.
Got you. One follow-up question, Kyle.
Mhm.
I deal with the youth demographic. That's my target audience. And I want
Okay.
to ask you a question based on your experience. How you made it. What advice could you give, if you have any, it's no problem if you don't. Could you give to other young inner city youth who, for example, had that same insecurity, whether they felt like they could accomplish what they, were interested in, especially in the field of science, because you already mentioned the diversity, hypocrisy, as it were, one person in a
Lack thereof.
the lack
Yeah.
thereof. Exactly.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
advice would you give a young person of ethnic background, you say POC, but particularly Black, since we represent, and now our vantage point of life is Black. What advice would you give them in order to encourage them and motivate them to pursue that dream that they have so they could be as successful as you?
Got it. Well, the first thing you have to, one, you want to define what that goal is. Just don't let it be abstract. Really try to define it as best you can and feel comfortable with it if it changes. I mean, for myself, growing up, I wanted to be a cardiologist. I wanted to be a, doctor, all this other stuff. And then as I went to school, I realized I really have no interest in becoming a physician. So I mean, one, I aim very high with goals. I used to tell, growing up, I used to tell people I was going to go to Harvard, and I used to get made fun of. No one goes to Harvard or anything like that, or even either if I had other goals as well, or if I had like athletic goals. So I would say just in general, set your goals, be very specific in regards to what you want that goal to be, and then go deaf. Go deaf to what others may say. That's what I mean. So, if you are pursuing it, you're going to have people who's going to be an antagonist or who's going to try to keep you where they are. You have to say to yourself, I don't hear that. I don't see that. I have to look beyond what I can, what I have to see beyond the horizon, so those are probably some of the two foundational things. And then third, find somebody who is doing what you are looking to do. Younger people nowadays, they have something I didn't have access to. That's a thing called the internet on their phones. Actually, you'd be surprised. I always tell young people, create a LinkedIn profile. I don't know what the cutoff age is or the age. I say, go ahead and just create a LinkedIn profile and just start networking and start adding people, as a network on LinkedIn or however, if you need to get permission from your parents, go ahead and get permission from your parents. I doubt they'll say no, but go ahead and just start doing that. See how people are building out, like professionals, who have been in the industry for a while. See how they are presenting themselves on LinkedIn, what terms are they using, what, certifications and things like that. And then use that as like your bridge to connect, to get to that person that, and so, I mean, I think those would just be some of the key steps. Awesome. That I would try to advise somebody, especially a younger person today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One more, Kyle. I'm sorry, man. I know
No, you're asking some of the same ones I would ask as well. So no.
So it's funny because I mentor quite a few teenagers in the city youth, and I want to share. I want to bring this into the conversation as well, as opposed to some of the challenges these young people may be facing, not only with regards to their own insecurity, but from the insecurity of those around them, and not necessarily their peers, but also their parents and their family. You have family members and parents who are naysayers, so to speak, or critics of their child's development, which is sad. But the point I want to make real quick is I spoke with one of the teens that I mentor, and this is what I tell them: open up a LinkedIn account. In fact, I have two of them who opened up a LinkedIn account that I'm very proud of. But this other one opened up the LinkedIn account, and their parent actually said, "What is that?" They was like, what is that LinkedIn account? Is that a fake Facebook? Get off that LinkedIn account and stick off it, because they themselves weren't aware of what LinkedIn was or how powerful it was. So then they're projecting their own ignorance on their child's development in terms of professional development, right? So I just wanted to bring that to the conversation for these young people as well, to understand that sometimes you'll get that naysaying and opposition from your parents. Right. But if we emphasize LinkedIn and professional development too, so hopefully we can not only influence that youth, but we can also influence their parents as well if they take the time to look at the content that's being put out here and things like that. So that's all I wanted to add to the conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Indeed.
Thank you.
So in reference of James, what you're saying, like you being a microbiologist, right? People want to know what does that mean? Like, what does that day-to-day look like for you? Because you being in an industry where we're not represented as much as we probably should or could be. But talk to us about like what's your day-to-day looking like? What are not only some of the challenges that you faced being African American in this field, but also some of the successes that you've had as well?
Interesting. The day-to-day life of a microbiologist, right? Not very exciting. So I don't know. Let's see here. What are some of the challenges I face as a African American man in the field of science? Yeah. So one, again, I still deal with the lack of representation. I've worked for a number of companies. I can count on less than one hand the number of men, African-American men, that have been in those same companies with me. And then, even African-American women, I mean, just in total. Great thing, the company I'm actually working with now, we actually have a very good representation when it comes to African-Americans within the microbiology lab. And I'm definitely glad I'm in a position now in my career that I can have influence to, one, be part of that recruiting process for applicants, and then also making sure that we get qualified applicants that are coming in, but also that are representing a typically underserved community. I would say probably one of the challenges, and it's kind of one of those things you don't think about, but how to say this? I think I think we probably all deal with it. People of other groups aren't used to interacting with African Americans. They have very limited viewpoints on who we are, what we are about, and what our capabilities are. So they come in with a lot of prejudice, whether or not they are aware of it or not. And I think a lot of times, really, there's a lot of work that has to be done in regards to people finding validity in the argument you're trying to make. I myself having to do that at times. I find more pushback, in the places I worked previously in regards to people accepting, my professional input, opinion, or even data I have even generated that is verified, that is empirical, when it's coming from myself. And it's even funny, even the companies I work in, I'm like, well, you hired me to do this work. I've done this work. I have gone through the scientific rigors. I followed the processes, whatever, but you're still questioning. And I think those are some of those subconscious biases that come from the greater society where they say, well, do you really believe, or is it really, feasible to really take in what it is coming from African American? We're just not people that, unfortunately, within our society, there's not a lot of us in positions where people are used to taking information from us in that way. And you deal a lot with that when it comes in the science community as well. So that's probably one of the challenges. That's probably the most standout challenge I think I've seen in my career. I've come in and I've helped companies, make millions of dollars, figure out things, whatever was going on with manufactured materials or goods, and I've helped them figure out, and, they've had people, who's supposed to have higher levels of education than myself or this, that, and the other, and, a lot of questions and stuff. And I've had to do a lot of arguing in defense of, my work, and then it turns out what I've done was correct. I think a lot of that plays into it. So, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, as you start to ascend in your career and you start to have influence and you start to get into positions where you are part of the brain trust within an organization, those people just aren't used to hearing input from somebody with more melanin, than probably the typical. So that's probably one of the challenges I think I've seen or faced as a microbiologist. What was the second question you'd asked me?
Right. The second question was the successes. You mentioned something actually very interested out that I was wanted to touch on later, but like the whole melanin argument as well, because I think people throw that term around now, which I actually like the term, and I actually know a little bit about the term. But if you can go into that as well, just kind of like the breakdown of what you know of melanin, especially when you being a microbiologist, like what does that mean? I guess in reference of maybe creating products or just in reference of us going into this kind of COVID, being in COVID, this pandemic. What does that mean? Or does it have any special abilities or qualities? Because people throw it around scientifically, but then I don't think they have a basic knowledge, at least of how it can function, what it is, why we have it, those types of things. But
okay, melanin itself is clearly, it's the pigment that allows for, it's a pigment, it's a protein that is expressed, that's pigments that allows our skin to become darker. You can say that's why we have dark skin, because we produce higher levels of it. Typically people who do have higher levels of melanin in their skin typically don't produce as much vitamin D. So in regards to correlating that with COVID-19, when you look at some research that came out from the UK, they had actually done a whole study with thousands of people, and they shown that people with higher levels of vitamin D actually don't suffer more serious or potentially mortal consequences of COVID-19 infections versus people who have lower levels. So what does that mean? African Americans on average have lower levels of vitamin D than Caucasians. So let's just draw that broad contrast there. So you could correlate that and say, well, hey, people with more melanin in the skin is probably going to have lower levels of vitamin D. So we need to actually be doing more to actually introduce and get campaigns to really right now, people who don't have COVID-19 or have not been affected. They need to, really be supplementing and taking vitamin D, once they have consulted the doctor and the doctor can confirm that, that's the healthy thing for them to do, but really try to help improve the vitamin D levels. So that's something that I know for myself, I've been doing actually the last 2 years, but definitely more consistently over the last year here, is I've been taking vitamin D supplements to really, really raise those levels, because, in case I do become infected with COVID-19, I want to make sure that, that lowers my probability of succumbing to it fatally. So that's kind of the impact of, I guess, I don't want to say melanin is really the direct correlation to that, but if you want to try to broadly, look at a group, at least if I was from a public health perspective looking at it, I would say, well, okay, I understand, melanin production. I understand, people with higher levels of melanin are going to produce less vitamin D. We need to make sure to target these groups of people. That would be how I would look at it from that perspective. But there's nothing else genetically that predisposes people, African Americans to really, be infected with COVID-19 and stuff like that. Really, a lot of the things we are experiencing within this community here in America has to do with just our socioeconomic standing, with the country, and the fact that a lot of us are working in frontline positions, but yeah.
No, thank you.
Brother, thank you so much. This
Yeah.
is the first time, and since COVID started, Cal, that I got that information in regards to vitamin D and how important it is versus the culture of those high melanin. I want to go back to one of the things that you answered, James, in the first previous question, where you said in those positions where you were at, you found yourself second guessed, right? They hired you to do a job, right? Obviously, if you hired me, you believe in my capabilities of doing this job. So then when I give you the answers related to the job that you hired me, that you thought I was qualified for, you're going to question me. And then in the long run, it turns out I was right in the first place. So we just wasted time going through all this back and forth questioning, right? A lot of, I've experienced that myself in corporate, right? And I've had to find certain coping mechanisms to deal with that. I mean, I got hit with that as early as in my 20s, where I was second guessed, right? Hired for a position as second guest, and I started seeing a pattern there. That's when I started realizing what's going on. The question I want to ask you, James, is what was your coping mechanism with that? How did you learn how to deal with that and not let that ignorance or subconscious bias throw you off? Because a lot of these inner city youth only know how to deal with frustration in a certain way. They haven't been trained to build up their mental capacity to resist the mental battle. They know how to fight, they know how to defend themselves physically, but they always get beat corporately, mentally, because of
that emotional intelligence.
Intelligence.
They don't have a wide range of that.
Don't have a wide. So my question to you, James, is how did you deal with that? What was your coping mechanism, and could you share that with some of these young people that may encounter that, or not may, but will encounter that? Share with them, how did you deal with it, and what was your process?
That is a great question, and my background is a little unique. Because I probably have been dealing with that for longer than I probably should have. But yeah, so, I would say, yeah, so that's a good question. So you can't become emotional about it. You have to always stay within, I don't want to say your role, but you have to stay within yourself and the knowledge that you created. Because yeah, I mean, you're going to be challenged, and the second someone sees you have an emotional response to it, they know that there's an issue, that there's something, there's a flaw. I talked with coworkers, before, and they say, I'm going to, I'll just make up stuff and just keep saying it over again until it becomes true. So sometimes, really the bravado, the confidence really is just enough to carry its way through. And I'm not saying, I'm not one of those people who will do that, but, sometimes you have to generate, like I know the first job I worked on, they didn't want to hire me because I was African-American. I'll just come straight out and say that. And I was a man. Yeah, they did not want to hire me because of both. But yeah, so fortunately I had one person advocate for me after weeks and weeks and weeks for me to come work for that company. And, they were having serious issues with a product that they were making. They was having contamination. I was the first microbiologist the company had ever hired. So I was already feeling a very tough role. I was going into this, this is my first microbiology job. So, so it's two people, first for everybody here. And, so I was very limited resources, working with what I can. And I know that, and I was going up against what I had produced. I was going up against what they had told me that they had sent these same samples out to another laboratory who's supposed to have PhDs and other people that have worked on this same issue. And they came out with a different set of results. But here I was coming out with a different set of results. And I was like, I said, now this is my first job. I'm in my early 20s, recession, first microbiology job. I'm the first microbiologist. I know this company didn't want to hire me. I know I'm gonna put this out here. I'm gonna contradict what these other people are saying. And if I'm wrong, this is the biggest, the product we was making it for, it was a very big contract for the company. So I knew what was gonna happen. So I essentially just went to my manager, I followed the chain of command. So I went to my manager at first and told him, hey, listen, this is what I see. This is the results. Of course, lots of questions. Like, are you sure about that? I was like, I said, these are the results. This is what I've done. I didn't get emotional. I didn't get, I just stayed within myself. So that's why I was going back earlier where I said I stayed within myself. I've always tried to make sure I maintain my stoic, my stoic demeanor. So I would say that's probably one of the first things. You just have to stay within yourself. You're going to get questioned, just come back, respond back with the data. Just stick to the facts. Stick to the facts. I have a business mentor. She always used to say the same thing. She always just say, listen, just stick to the facts. Just state your point, let people absorb it. They don't hear it, state it again. They don't hear it, state it again. Do not waver from it. Because the second you start to waver, that's when they see that chink in the arm. And that's why I was going back earlier to the emotional side of things. if you start to waver and you start to show an emotional response, then people know that there's a chink in the armor. They know something's wrong. And that's when they really start to scrutinize you. So, so for myself, I was questioning and they asked for more verification. They said, well, listen, I want you to write up the procedure that you followed, do all this other stuff. So I sat down and I said, okay, fine, and I'll do that. And I followed their steps. I said, so I typed out everything and I presented it. And then, he looked at it and he presented it up to the CEO and stuff like that. And then, CEO called me into this office. And then, I'm talking to the CEO of the company. Here I am in my early 20s, going back and forth, and I'm having to defend the results. And I'm doing all of this now. I'm like, this is not typical activities for this type of work. I'm entry-level microbiologist. I shouldn't be talking to the CEO of the company about something like this. But again, all I did is go in there. Now you can imagine how nerve-wracking that is. But I go in, I state the facts. So I would say for a young person, find your linchpin, find the thing that, if you are stating an argument, for me it's science, so I have data as my support to anything I present to somebody else. If you work in another industry, so say like from a business perspective, if you're trying to go out here and you're trying to start your business and, people are questioning whether or not you are worth whatever you're trying to charge, just stick to it. Do some research and say, listen, based on these numbers, this is what I can bring to your company, or this is what you can gain by working with me, and just stick to that, and just let people marinate on it. I mean, either people are going to take it or they're not, and you can't take it personal if somebody says no to you. I never take no personally. I always take no as a maybe. Because I have had people tell me no, and then they turn back around and they will say yes later. I'll say for youth, you can't take the pushback you get personal. You really have to find a way to really kind of just feel confident and really resolute, in what it is you're trying to present, and just really stick to it. And that's why I said earlier with my coworkers, when they say they'll repeat a narrative over and over until it becomes fact. So sometimes you just have to have that bravado and just say, listen, this is it, and just go with it. So
Thank you.
I would say that'll probably be how I would try to encourage somebody to try to work through that. Those would be the steps. Yep.
Thank you so much, man. One of the key things that I got from that, Kyle, and I've just recently learned that over the past few years, to stick to the facts. Because when you stick to the facts, it takes the emotion out of it, right? You have you have your talking point that you can stay focused on. Very good. Thank you so much. Follow up is why is it important? And we already know the answer to this, but I just want to, get your take on it and make sure. Why is it important that African Americans be involved in science careers? How many of us are actually behind the working, the scenes in science research positions from your vantage point and your experience?
Not enough of us. It's growing though. It's growing. I am happy to see more African American, I guess minorities. I'm happy to see African American minorities. I'll speak from African American perspective, and even just minorities. But I'm definitely glad to see more women stepping into it. I definitely like to see more of us men step into these roles as well in the science communities, because one thing, I work a lot in innovation, R&D. And we do a lot of brainstorming. We sit around in rooms at times and we'll spend a whole day, multiple days, just thinking of ideas.
Wow.
Literally just thinking of ideas. And at those moments, and sometimes we like to pull in people from different departments to, work on ideas. But I guess I'm circling that back to say, African Americans, we have not all of us, but, people from different backgrounds really do have input. My rural background from South Carolina has really informed how I approach and look at things when it comes to my scientific disciplines, and that has had major impacts for companies that I've worked for before, and just even how I, can break things down. My father always liked to say, life is not complicated, just keep things simple. And we're discussing complex scientific, concepts or theories or whatever, I'm always thinking, okay, how much can I break this down? Break it down to its most simplest level, build back up, okay, so I broke all the way down to, I have my one block left. If I add the second block, what happens when I add block A and block B together? So what happens? How can I influence things there? Can I do anything to influence blocks A and block B? I probably can't. Okay, I'll move on to block A, B, C. Can I do something, how do the two of those look up? Do they line up side by side, or does block C line up on top of block A and B? You see what I'm saying? So you kind of just, you really deconstruct things and really kind of just work your way up. At least that's how I try to approach things. So I would say, that would definitely be the general approach. When it comes to just the, like I said, representation, I definitely think we should have more of it. I think when a lot of policies and things are being put out, it's very important for us to be there to really make sure that they are considering, when it comes to groups like we talk, okay, I'll actually use this as an example. So when I was in my graduate program, we were discussing HIV infection rates. HIV infects the African-American community disproportionately, and it affects African-American women at a much higher rate. So I'm, again, I have a public health background, so I'm discussing this with my colleagues, my classmates at the time, and one of the people misinterpreted it. Now, we are in public health leadership, so we're all supposed to go into leadership roles within the public health community. So one of my classmates, I guess, misinterpreted a statistic, and they were stating that 50% of African-American women have HIV. And I was like, no, that's wrong. You're saying half of African-American women have HIV. That just sounds wrong. That's just wrong. But yeah, so that's how he was interpreting it. So I literally was fighting back with him. I was like, no, that's not what the data said. The data is saying African-American women are 50% more likely to acquire HIV. Now, that may seem subtle, but I want to get back to this point. This guy's supposed to go on, one day he's going to lead a public health organization. He's going to set the policy for whatever. If he's interpreting data in this way, how would that influence how he looks at a whole population of people? You see what I'm saying? So it is important. So I made sure I got with the professor and everything. I said, you need to make sure to correct him on this now. He's not listening to me. You need to make sure you correct him on this, because I even knew then, this is years ago, I knew then, I said, I knew he was going to go off, to take on some leadership role somewhere, and he's going to have influence on people's lives. And I can't, the best thing I could do, at least with my conscience, was to make sure that he understood that do not go out here with the idea and you sit in rooms deciding people's lives that you think half of African-American women have HIV. That's not it. So to answer your question, it is very important that we really find ourselves getting into these positions and having these opportunities to really interact within the science community, because science really does affect our lives, as we have seen here in the past year. Thank
you so much. Thank you for sharing that, brother. Because I know your sister Trudy mentioned the same thing, like you all being in these spaces and having these voices to be able to voice concern and also advocate for more of us to be in these positions. Because it's not like we don't have intellect, it's not like we don't have the interest, but we don't have those examples. Like, you were fortunate, and I'm glad to have those influences of, your sister, your family to support you of wanting to go to Harvard, wanting to go into the science realm, even though you felt like, you were, it was kind of put upon you, but like you're saying, it's glad for you all to share that, because science does, as we, like you say, as we see now, does have a very big influence on how we live our lives, where we live, what products we buy, and that's one thing I want to go into as well, like, and mention some of your successes in this field, because we know it's definitely challenging. You definitely know you've been doing it for a while, but like, what's some maybe one or maybe a few successes that you've had in reference of maybe being a part of product development, or like you said, in reference to public health?
Okay. So I mean, I think I've done a few things here in my career so far. Of course, I made sure that products got out there safely into the community, because I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I worked in healthcare, now I work in chemical industrial industry. So within all the industries I worked in, I always made sure that, whatever data I was generating was of the highest caliber, or I guess you could say validity, because I knew that this was going to have impact on people's lives, especially when I was working in the pharmaceutical industry. So I mean, it's kind of hard to say because, a lot of the benefits I had was more towards the corporate side. So it helped save the company money or help get out, products that companies went on to, do things with. I do have on my belt a couple of patents. I have worked for some companies. I have patented a few inventions. So the company I work at now, we do a lot of disinfectant development. And so I've helped patent some potential inventions there. I can't disclose yet. But yes, so do some work there. I have worked for another company that did put out the first, 24-hour long-lasting disinfectant approved by the EPA for healthcare use. So I was on the team to help get that patent through, that invention. So that actually, little did I know when I was working on that 5 years ago, that it would have the impact they have now, for people, given how much, disinfectants are needed right now and stuff. So looking at it, seeing it out there in the market, seeing, the fruit of the work that I put in there, seeing that is having a positive impact on, for people's lives, definitely has been something, at least for myself. So, one thing I would say, I think in the science community, you go into this not really thinking, you're going to get much notoriety. You don't really do this with, I guess the accolades in mind. But, seeing the results or seeing, the positive impact of just maintaining a high level of integrity to work and seeing what the end results of that are years down the road, definitely is something, I see as an achievement. So I mean, I think for myself, coming from a small town in South Carolina, knowing that I've helped companies, get products out there that I know people are using now safely, knowing in the middle of a pandemic that, products or, disinfectants that I help to create are now being used to help keep other people safe and their families safe, and things I'm working on now, knowing that, what we're going to get out there in the market in the next few years is going to be impactful on the lives of others as well. So, it's just kind of just a continuum. So, yeah.
Man, all right. So, man, I don't know if we're gonna have enough time, Kyle. James, I don't know if there's enough hours for this discussion. We got a lot more questions. I got a lot more questions.
Go ahead, guys. I'm here for you.
Yes,
I'm here for you. Yeah.
Yes.
Water real quick. Yeah. So,
go with it.
All right. When did you first hear about COVID-19? What was actually being said? And then with that, how did you get to know Dr. Fauci, if I said his name correctly?
Fauci, yeah, if you know him.
Yeah. So, I mean, I knew the name Dr. Fauci for a while. I follow public health. I follow epidemiology. So I was already aware of his name years prior. I don't know him personally. But so I was already aware of his name. There's some other key people within the community I'm aware of. I became aware of COVID-19 back actually in late 2019, actually. So again, I follow global epidemiology quite frequently. I was actually, I'm not gonna go into that, but so I follow that. So it was back in like December of 2019 is when I first became aware of it, because I knew of the situation going on in China. And I knew that they were experiencing an outbreak of this new virus. And then I was looking at satellite data at the time, because in my free time, I like to look at satellite data. And then I was looking at, traffic of how people were visiting hospitals and stuff like that, because they was trying to track that. And so that's when I first became aware of it. I was thinking that it was something that they weren't sharing a lot of information at the time. So it was definitely kind of hard to really understand how it was spreading. There were some ideas that it may have jumped from a market in the Wuhan district into people. I'm like, that makes sense. Knowing the type of family of viruses it is as well. I could probably see that. But yeah, so, when it started making its way here to the United States, I actually thought this is where I got a little concerned, because back in October 2019, we actually dismantled our global response notification team. So we actually dismantled that. So I was like, well, I don't. Yeah, so I was like, well, I know we don't have a response team there, so I know that's going to be an issue. But I was thinking, with our public health system, seeing that how we have dealt with past potential pandemics. When I say past, the most recent probably been like Ebola. You think about Zika virus. You probably don't. You said what?
Was it the bird flu that was going around or something like that? Bird flu?
Well, you have the so you had the bird flu that was circulated at one time. So so all these, but we in our day-to-day lives, these really didn't impact us like that. I mean, there were some deaths clearly, and I remember people used to fuss about 1,000 deaths. But that was a failure by the 2 administrations ago. That was a failure when we had a couple thousand people die from it. But yeah, so. So I was thinking, okay, as we got into 2020, I was thinking, our global, our surveillance system is robust. We should be able to capture this, contain it, and this should not really be significant within the United States. But I think we all have seen how the last year has played out, and so from my perspective, knowing that everybody was aware of this back in late November 2019. Early December 2019, and the fact that we really did mount a strong defense against it until about end of February, beginning of March, I was like, I know the public health system operates better than that. It's kind of like knowing that you have this great, security system and you refuse to even activate it, and that's really what is what I saw with that. And then, as we progress throughout the year. So, so for myself, I was aware of it back in the late 2019.
Wow. Yeah, because everybody got kind of blindsided by it in a sense, but right, you all that are in the field, you all hear things down the pipeline, much more much earlier than we do, and just in a way that it's been dealt with from your perspective, dealing with behind the scenes. Do you feel like this administration, or like you just mentioned, the previous administration kind of dropped the ball? Do you feel like this new administration with like Biden, do you feel like he's making steps, or do you feel like he's making steps toward getting us back to whatever that new normal will be? Or do you think it's more maybe state, because I know certain states have certain restrictions or unrestrictions that we have to deal with, i.e. Texas. Yeah. Everybody's going to Florida, seems like, so how did you view the, people moving around like this, man? Like,
So we're in a very interesting situation.
Yeah.
Because we are working this current administration, and I will give credit to the last administration where needed, because, there was a rollout of the vaccine was under the last administration as well. But yeah, so, but, speaking currently, we are in a very interesting state where we need to contain the current variant of the virus. I think the current administration is making some very aggressive steps to achieve that goal. They're trying to promote the use of face masks. They're trying to promote, I think the Biden administration, they enacted the Defense Production Act. Mm-hmm. So they're, ramping up supplies of PPE and stuff like that to frontline workers. So, I think these are all necessary steps, because, clearly when the pandemic started, there was a shortage of PPE and stuff like that. Well, when you're having bad practices, that's really how you spread viruses more efficiently. So, so really making sure, we have those supplies on hand. Clearly this administration is looking to do the rollout of the vaccines. So we really have to get people vaccinated very quickly, actually, because we have to. The reason why we need to get everybody vaccinated quickly, clearly, because we want to cut down on deaths and the hospitalizations. But then we also want to keep this new emergent variants that are showing up. We want to keep those at bay, and we need to get as many people vaccinated as possible before we allow this new variant to really take off, which could potentially diminish the effectiveness of the current vaccines that we have out there. So, this administration has made it its priority to really make doses available for every person, at least have enough doses available by May for the entire, U.S. Now, whether or not everybody is going to get vaccinated, that's another question. But at least the availability of supply will be there. That's a very, from a projection standpoint, that's very aggressive, and it looks like, the country is hitting those numbers where we're rolling out a little over 2 million vaccinations a day. So that seems very likely, for us to hit those metrics, and actually the numbers are increasing. So I think from that perspective, the administration is doing a lot to really get containment of the vaccine and make sure we can limit the spread, at least with the variant that we was aware of. I also would think, there's also I'm probably stepping outside my wheelhouse a little bit, but I also think there's a behavior or there's like a economic component to this. Of course there was, the Congress passed the stimulus package, but a lot of people, are making or taking risks because of their current economic situation. So we de-incentivize that type of behavior. And, of course, we have to provide relief to people so they don't feel pressure to go out here and pay their bills. This is all part of good public health strategizing. So I think the administration is understanding that, and they're understanding that we can take away the pressure from people, from an economic perspective. They're not going to feel like they have to take risks just to keep the lights on, just to keep food on the table and stuff like that. So I really think, that multi-pronged approach. So, a lot of it has to do with, behaviors in regards to, social distancing and stuff like that. But really, a lot of this can be just stemmed, just from taking the pressure off of people from a financial point of view. You had mentioned something about the states trying to open up.
Right.
I think that's where it concerns me with the states opening, because the states that are trying to open up, you mentioned Texas and Florida, they actually have the highest numbers of this new variant that is currently circulating. So I'm like, this is where I have to like kind of keep myself contained at times, because that's where it becomes frustrating. It's like these states are about to open up. They have opened up 100%. They're saying, well, we got 12% of the U.S. population vaccinated so far. I don't know the numbers for Texas and Florida, what their vaccination numbers are. But overall, this is about 12 to 13% vaccination so far. So when you have Texas, and Florida opening up, they have the highest number of this new variants that are circulating. That's a problem. And unfortunately, viruses don't care about borders or state borders.
Right.
So, while these states are operating independently, they say, well, we are, Texas may have 25, 30% of the population vaccinated for all I know. But, if they're allowing this new variant out, to circulate, then that's a problem, because, whoever, has that new variant, they're going to go into other states. It's very similar. If you guys remember when this pandemic first started, there were some states that were closing down, some states were opening, because they were just back and forth, but we didn't just do a consistent across the nation quote unquote lockdown. I don't really think we ever did a lockdown, but and we saw how that worked. We saw that, okay, New York started out, they had a high number of cases, they were on lockdown, but then we saw it spread to other states and stuff like that. And it was just a slow rolling tide throughout the country. I kind of feel like, with Texas and Florida, we can actually see the reverse of that, where, they're going to, instead of, lock you down, they're going to open up, and then, they're going to think, well, we're good, here in our states. And then I'm worried that we're going to see another slow rolling tide of these new variants start to take hold in the adjoining states from there. But yeah, so I really, again, that's politics and stuff that get into that. But, just looking at from the numbers perspective, public health, I really wish, we could really work as more of a cohesive, I guess, country, and really have one set standard. I know it's hard because you have to get into the economics of things, but, really a consistent strategy in regards to how we're going to reopen, our states, instead of just doing 100%, maybe we do phase openings or something like that. And I was consistent across the board, but, that's politics.
Indeed, James. Let me ask this real quick, Kadi, because You hit on a lot of different things, and like here in New York, you know, we had stopped for a time being. We had stopped people from coming in from states like Georgia, Florida, Texas. You know, because okay, we got this kind of thing, you know, under wraps, so these got some handle on it, and it's like now other people are coming from other places. It's like, no, hold on, like you may be bringing like more of the virus with you, so we're gonna shut that down, or you at least got to do the quarantine for 14 days. You know, have to do the quarantine. And I'm glad you mentioned like with the variants, because my question in conjunction to one I just asked is, what do we not know about the virus that people may be looking? Because, you know, just speaking honestly, we as African Americans, we have this long and tumultuous history with medicine, especially in this country.
No, I'm very aware of it. Yeah.
And you know, everybody want to mention the Tuskegee experiment, which is true, but there are other experiments they've done on us that, you know, there's a book called Medical Apartheid. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Mm-hmm. These atrocities, these experiments that these doctors and medical facilities done on Black people to test certain surgeries, certain prescriptions and things like that. But what are we not knowing about? And what are we not knowing that could truly hurt us in the end with the virus?
We don't know the long-term impacts of it. There's a lot of attention focused on deaths around COVID-19. And I understand deaths is bad. I mean, I know people, you know, who have died from, you know, COVID-19, you know, friends, and, you know, they have family members who have died. So I'm aware of, you know, the impact of that and, you know, how tragic that's tearing people apart. We don't understand, you know, the impacts of it just becoming infected from it. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier with vitamin D levels, you know, why people who have lower levels of vitamin D have a higher probability of dying from the virus than people with, you know, higher level, I'm sorry, I flipped it. A lot of people with lower levels of vitamin D have a higher chance of dying from it than people with higher levels of vitamin D. You know, we don't know, you know, there's a term they're calling now for people who were infected with COVID-19, who suffer long-term, you know, illness from it. They call it long haulers. You know, these are people, you know, they're otherwise healthy people. Then all of a sudden, you know, after they've been infected with the virus, they could have had mild symptoms, some had no symptoms, you know, some were hospitalized, but, you know, afterwards, they are not functioning at their full self prior to being infected. You know, that's significant. You know, when you're talking about, you know, let's say, I mean, right now, you know, we have 30 million cases of people infected with COVID-19, about 10% of the US population. You know, that could be a serious medical issue years down the road. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we're having athletes who are having heart issues now. I mean, young people, you know, who are otherwise healthy can't even play their sports anymore because they have, you know, some form of inflammation around their heart, you know, or other types of issues. And even with children, you know, there's been an increase in Kawasaki disease among children, you know, who become infected with the virus. I just read a story the other day about this young boy, you know, who had an inflammatory reaction to COVID-19, and he had 4 of his limbs had to be cut off, you know, because of it. You know, so we don't, and there's neurological effects associated with it. You know, so I think those are things. So, you know, people, while we're rolling out the vaccines and we know that, you know, we're getting there, people are starting to feel comfortable now. You know, I would say, you know, you still need to be vigilant in regards to, you know, your practices, because you just don't want to get it. You know, you may not be one of the risk groups who could potentially pass away from it, at least at the same rate as others. There's no guarantee you won't, but you just probably won't. You know, you're just not in that high rate group of mortality. But that doesn't mean that, you know, there's not any other comorbidities that could be associated with it that could pop up years down the road. And that's one of the things the science community is really trying to ascertain is what does an infection from COVID-19 look like, you know, years from now? You know, well, at least what impact would that have on the health of the public years from now? It's one of those things, you know, I've been keeping a very close eye on because I think that's very important. I think, you know, we're going to be dealing with this while we may get the infections under control. And I do believe we will get the infections under control and we will get back to this normal sense, this normal way of living again. I am thinking from the perspective of, what are we going to deal with the people, what are we going to see 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, in regards to the people that were, that did come in contact with COVID-19. And I do think it's been one of those things that we're going to be dealing with for a very long time, potentially. But yeah, so.
Appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm sorry if I'm a little long-winded as well.
Nah, this is what we need.
No, bro.
Okay.
Nah, this is hey, this is what our listeners want, because I mean, this is thorough explanation. I don't think people really break it down for us enough where we can thoroughly understand what the stakes are, and also what's going on behind the scenes. Because again, we're getting the media. And one thing KAYODE and I talked about recently, and I've talked about it with other colleagues of mine, is that the media is starting to mix in with tabloid. It's really interesting. You're getting certain news sources that seem legit, like you said, empirical data, like they've done the data, but then it's starting to also mix in with some of the kind of tabloidish, sensational. So people are starting to kind of get news wary, and it's okay, well, they say this and it's on CNN, but it sounds kind of, I don't know who to trust, Yeah. So, we're looking for the people to kind of really, like you said, break it down for me. You know what I'm saying? What it said, treat me like I'm a fifth grader. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great approach.
Yeah. So no, brother, you definitely breaking it down through.
And to that point, I was speaking with some people that I know, and one of the key phrases that they use is "make it make sense." It doesn't make sense to me, because you have a situation where you have restaurants over the summer at the height of this pandemic that was still open, and to some extent, moving their business outside, but still in a closed, condensed area, or just not in the building, but outside in a closed, condensed area. You had the the protests taking place, all this stuff in the summer, right? You had the mask on, and then they're leaving these business institutions open. They can stay open, quote unquote, for monetary reasons, financial reasons, but yet the schools have to be closed. So make it make sense. Why the schools closed down? There's a shutdown of the schools, and they can't, there's no congregation, but yet you're allowing to have these businesses open, yet you're allowing to have these restaurants open, yet you're allowing to, what's happening here? I'm not seeing the correlation in regards to the deaths that are being reported, as opposed to the places that you still have. Is this an emergency or not? So that's kind of the confusion that's going on. To Cal's point, that I'm seeing in reference to, like you said, Cal, the misinformation, right, is being moved in. So with that said, James, we heard that they're using mitochondrial DNA to detect how severe someone's COVID-19 can be. How does that work? Are you aware of that? Are you familiar with that? How does that mitochondrial DNA work with COVID-19?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I am, I'm not technically a virologist, so I'll speak, but then I won't speak too far, because I know virologists might be like, no, you don't. But anyway, speaking, viruses will attack whenever a virus infects a host cell, because viruses don't live freely. They have to infect a host, so they will infect a host cell. They will insert their genetic material into that host cell. And then from there, they will hijack that host cell to start making copies of the virus, to start to replicate, to obviously emerge and to proliferate and to grow and to hopefully spread to the next person. But within that host cell, there is a function. You mentioned the mitochondria. The mitochondria is very, it is the power plant of the cell. So all the activity of the cell, it helps really coordinate all the activity of the cell, really helps get things moving, helps, send out all the materials, energies, however you want to think about it, really to help the cell keep functioning. The virus will actually take that over, and it will start telling the mitochondria to start producing my genetic material, virus XYZ, or this situation, COVID-19. So typically speaking, if and the viruses are very adept at, because the host cell does have, pathways or mechanisms in place to actually detect and to send out a signal, to the rest of the body to come attack this potential invader, and try to knock it out. but then a virus will, it will actually sequester that signaling pathway. So, to allow for it to continue to replicate. And so by it continues to do that, so it's like, so imagine, not really the best example, but imagine if you allow a set of, I don't know, so just imagine, if you allow your house to get a little dirty, so your house is a little dirty, all right, so you got it out, so you got whatever's that make your house a little dirty, you got it out, so your house is just a little messed up. But imagine if you went away for like 2 weeks, and then whatever that was causing your house to become destroyed just really ransacked your entire house. That's the same thing kind of happens with a virus when it invades a host cell. If a virus is more efficient at being able to hijack the mitochondria and really damage it, you're going to see more and more damage throughout the cells within the body itself. So you're just going to see more extensive damage, and that's an indicator. Typically, that's an indicator of how much this virus, the disease process of this virus, is taking place within the body. And that, and that can give you an indication of how severe the infection is. So that's about as much as I can explain with viruses and mitochondria when it comes to infection. So that's really about as far as I can go. So
thank you, sir. Thank you so much. With that said, based on your experience, right? I'm sorry, Kyle.
No, please, brother.
With that said, based on your experience, it's very good. This leads me to the next question that people hearing panic. Oh my God, if I get this COVID-19, this is what's going to happen. My mitochondrial DNA could take over. What are some, from your perspective, what are some daily alternatives people can do to protect themselves besides the vaccine?
Mm-hmm.
So if they have that big issue regarding the vaccine, they don't trust the government because we don't know long-term 10 years down the line. You got to give me something. What alternatives are there that you may know of besides taking the vaccine?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say one thing. You have to. People ask me this question all the time. Should I get the vaccine? I get asked that question a lot, and I say, well, your alternatives to not getting the vaccine. One, every day you wake up, if you step outside your door, you risk death. That's one. Right now, this virus has if just overall, for all age groups, it has about a 3% mortality rate. We don't know what the mortality rate is going to be with the new variants. But if you're in a risk group, that mortality rate goes up significantly. So that's one. So, they say, do I trust the government or not? I say, well, listen, we know millions of doses of the vaccines been put out there. There's probably been a couple of deaths associated with it. I broke it down from somebody before, and I said, dying from the vaccine, you have a 0.00001% chance of dying from the vaccine versus a 3% chance from dying from the virus. So 0.00001% chance. But anyway, but to answer your question, so daily things. So what would you do daily? Of course, you want to maintain, your social distance. Everyone talks about that. When it comes to behavior, I say the number one thing, people don't talk about it enough: washing your hands. We're not aware of how much throughout the day we touch our faces, and we're not aware how often our hands go up to our mouths and to our orifices. But yeah, so hand washing that's a really good way, because most things you pick up, most potential pathogens you pick it up by whatever you touch throughout the day. And we touch a lot of surfaces, trust me. Mm-hmm. So, really very effective hand washing, I would say. If you are out, one of the things I do is if I'm out, if I can't wash my hands, I will sanitize before I get back into my car. Or if I'm out at the store or something, and before I get in my car, I will sanitize my hands, wait 30 seconds. That's another thing, proper sanitization. Most sanitizers, you have to rub them on. If they're alcohol-based, you rub them and you wait 30 seconds and wait for it to completely dry, at least, before you touch anything. If the sanitizer is still wet, you have not technically killed the virus, the microorganism that you are trying to get rid of, potentially. Mm-hmm. I tell people to properly use hand sanitizers. Read the back of labels, even when it comes to the disinfectants. Disinfectants have instructions for use. Read them. A lot of people like to spray and wipe. No, you spray, let sit for whatever the recommended contact time is for that particular sanitizer or disinfectant you're using, and then you wipe. You have to give it time to kill whatever it is you're trying to kill. I see too often people spray, they wipe, or they'll rub sanitizer in their hands and then they'll touch something immediately. Those, you've not done anything at all. I'll just be honest with you there.
Wow.
So, you know, so that's one of the things. You have to wait for the sanitizer to dry off your hands beforehand. But just generally, when you go out in public, you know, of course, you want to wear your face mask. I tell people there are 3 levels to the face mask. You have your cloth face mask, you have your surgical face mask, and you have the premium top of the line face mask, I like to call it, your KN95 or your N95 face mask. You know, face masks have become kind of a fashion statement now.
Yes.
I encourage people, don't look at it from a fashion perspective. This is a utilitarian device. You know, it just needs to serve a purpose. If you can get the best of the best, you get your N95. If you can't go for that, then you get your surgical mask. And then if you have nothing else, then yeah, just go ahead and do the cloth mask. But don't feel like, you know, a lot of people I see, you know, they'll do stuff, they'll brand their cloth masks or whatever, you know, that's fine. I mean, cloth masks are good. But if you do plan on being in an area with a lot of people for an extended period of time and you can't get out of it, if it's someplace you have to go, then you need to be trying to get an N95 face mask. If you want to be in an area for more than 15 minutes, definitely with around people. So that's exactly what I do. If I know I'm gonna go somewhere say if I'm walking into a building and I know nobody's in that building, well, I don't have anything less than a surgical face mask for myself. But, you know, if I knew I was walking the building, I knew there's nobody in there, I'll just wear a cloth face mask. If I know I'm going someplace, like let's say like the grocery store, or let's say I'm going to Target or I guess Walmart, wherever, and I know I need to go in there for a few minutes, you know, minimum I'm wearing is a surgical face mask. You know, I'm probably going to try to wear an N95, but, you know, minimum, it depends on how long I'm going to be in there. But if I have to go somewhere for an extended period of time, if I don't be around a group of people or something, or, you know, whatever, then I'm definitely going to wear an N95 face mask. So those are probably some things I try to let people know about. So, you know, get away from I know it's fashionable and I know people want to make it look good and stuff, but really that face mask has to serve a purpose. And, you know, if you need it, you know, right now, the Biden administration has the Defense Production Act. So we are generating a large number of PPE for people to wear. You know, if you can get hold of an N95, get hold of an N95, just go ahead and wear it. You know, I'm sorry, you know, your fashions, you know, I'm sorry it doesn't coordinate with your outfit. But, you know, I rather, you know, I would say, you know, make a choice about being healthy or trying to look good, you know, at the end of the day. So
real quick, I want to ask you a question. Now, I'm a novice at this, right? I'm a layman. I'm an average person in the street. I'm trying to figure out, I've seen the KN95 face masks, right?
Yep.
I've seen the cloth face mask, I've seen the surgical face mask, and I've seen the, you know, the luxury brand face mask. My question is, the K95 face mask looks like a general typical face mask, like the regular, I wouldn't say surgical face mask, but the question I'm trying to ask is, what makes KN95 so different, so much more powerful than the other face mask? It looks like a typical face mask to me. Is it because it contours the face more securely, or is it the actual material that the K95 is made of? Because I don't see it any thicker. I don't see any vented. You know, what makes KN95 the top of the line, most protective than the other masks?
Got it. Well, no, that's a great question. Yeah, so one, you did mention like it does contour around your face. So you are trying to create an effective seal around your face, because you are trying to, you know, for the most part, you're trying to just create a one-way exchange. You're just trying to have, you know, whatever air that you breathe in, you know, you're just trying to let it go out through there. You're not trying to allow for, you know, air to potentially, you know, come up, you know, from, I guess from around the face area. Typically, the construction of the face mask itself, the N95s, the KN95s, they are multi-layered. They are able to prevent particles down to 0.3 microns from passing through. The other good thing about these type of face masks is that they are electrostatically charged, and molecules that we release into the air do have a charge associated with them. And so the good thing about the KN95s or N95s is that they do have a charge. So they will, so even if you're dealing with a molecule, there's not too many things, well, free floating molecules are not less than 0.3 microns, but The great thing about it is that as a molecule does come in contact with that face mask, it will actually bind to it. So it will hold it in place. So to answer your question, that's one of the benefits about the KN95s is the material it's made of is contour. And then, like I said, it's in the number rating, 95 means it will effectively filter particulates down to 0.3 microns up to 95% of that. So that's very good. So I mean, generally speaking, as we're talking and we're producing aerosols and stuff like that, we're not generating nothing that small. That's why I recommend N95s. They are really like the premium, because if you're just going about your normal day-to-day, activities and stuff like that, N95, especially if you have to be in an environment with a lot of people for an extended period of time, you are really, I don't say go out there and take unnecessary risks, but if you have to be in that situation, N95 really is the best form of protection, because more than likely you can go into that situation and lower your chances significantly of, potentially inhaling respiratory droplets or aerosols that somebody else could have emitted. Then your only risk from there is the surfaces that you touch. So if you know that, then if I was in the area, if I know I'm touching the same surface somebody else touched, a door handle or something, that I know if I'm properly washing my hands or sanitizing, then I've pretty much almost effectively mitigated my risk of acquiring the COVID-19 infection.
Right, man, brother. So let me ask just really brief. What about the 2 mask thing? Because people's like, well, I'm gonna start wearing 2 masks now. Like, so is that effective? Because for me, I figure like you just might as well get the N95, the K95 mask. But is that 2 mask thing effective?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of recommendations out for wearing the 2 masks. I mean, it's better than 1. Definitely. Yeah. You get into the whole fit and wear situation. There's other people that can really go into depth about that. I mean, I guess in that situation, because you're wearing 2 masks, how comfortable can it be? And then you might end up touching your face more and stuff like that, or you might keep your underlayer face mask on longer or something. You can create more moisture and stuff like that. So you have to be really cognizant if you're going to do the 2 face mask situation. You have to understand, like, listen, I'm going to wear it. I'm going to do what I need to do. I don't have access to N95. Maybe I got some surgical masks. I want to wear 2 of them for protection. That's good. Understand that, okay, if I'm going to do the 2 mask situation, I need to be very, understanding that I'm going to do this, may not be the most comfortable situation. I need to be more cognizant that I can't be touching my face more. I can't be adjusting it as often, that type of thing. And understand that it has to have a very limited time use, as well. Because I'll be concerned about somebody, condensation forming with that underlayer mask. I guess not the outer layer mask, but I guess like the inner layer face mask. I'm worried about moisture barriers forming there, which could actually, make it more possible for, if you decide to wear that mask again, which people shouldn't, but if you do, I know people do it, it's definitely not going to be effective. So I would definitely recommend, if you can get hold of a N95, that would be the way to go. Surgical face mask, it's a 3-layer face mask to begin with. It's not electrostatically charged. But, if you wear a surgical face mask, if you do take the nose bridge and try to fit that well around you, that does a very good job at filtering out particulates. It's not going to filter out to the 0.3 micron level like an N95 does, but it will filter out quite a few particles as well. So, again, that's why I call it, that's more like the mid-level when it comes to risk mitigation with COVID-19, at least in my book. So, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
You also have your own business in addition to your science career, right? How do you balance them both? And what advice can you give to those who don't believe both can be done?
I balance them with the grace of God. So,
the true entrepreneur.
Yes.
That's a true entrepreneur comment right there.
Yeah. Let's see. Can they both be done? Kind of just has to be done. You have to, how to answer this question. So I didn't start my business and my job at the same time, or my career at the same time. I started one, was pretty moving along well with one, and then decided to take on a business. And then with the business, I added on based on what I could actually handle, from there. So I didn't just go from 0 to 100 in both, at the same time. I don't know if that's possible. I'm not going to say it's not possible. It doesn't seem very likely. So I think that's one way. I think you need to go ahead and have, a system in place. Definitely understanding, if you're working your job, you need to make sure you are comfortable and you understand how to do your job effectively, and you have a good system in place with your current work. Then if you're going to add on the business side of things, take on what you could take on at a time. And when I started my business 10 years ago, I started out passing out flyers in the grocery store parking lot. That's how I did it. And then from there, that whatever that little success that brought me, then I try to reach out to a restaurant. And then I signed on one restaurant. Then I try to manage doing that while, a job, and, that was very little. And then I just kind of let things just snowball from there. And then, as things grew and grew, I was able to, grow with it. Obviously the revenue grew with it as well. I was able to bring on people, and then find trusted people that can actually work to manage it and operate it and stuff like that. You can't take on everything at once with the business. You have to start it, definitely from, the ground. But I think you have to have a plan in place with it. So you have to say, listen, I'm doing both. Both are going to stress me out. Both are going to tire me out. But I have to understand why I'm doing it, why one feeds into the other. And I need to understand, I need to have a target in mind. I think I was mentioning this earlier about having targets and goals. You can't just be abstract. It has to be defined. It has to be a point plan. With my business, there's a target I have in mind in regards to where I need to get before I say, well, okay, then, this is going to be what I do full time. And actually, I have done my business full time before. I actually went back into the science field because I'm a glutton for pain, and I wanted both sides of my brain to be activated. I needed my business side of my brain to be activated, and I need my scientific part of my brain to be activated. For me, I am at my optimal when I'm having both engaged. I just kind of odd to explain, but but just for myself, that's kind of how it works for me. But if your goal is to say, okay, listen, I want to move away from my career or this job one day into my full-time passion or my goal, my dream as an entrepreneur, then you have to say, listen, okay, this job or this career path I'm on, it has to serve its purpose. So I can't become comfortable with things. I have to understand every day I have to wake up with a purpose, and I understand that I'm working. I understand that this is a means to the end. And it's very easy to become complacent with that. I think it can be done. It just depends on how large you want to make, how large you want your goal of entrepreneurship to be. If you want to run an organization with, 500 employees, of course, working a job probably is not going to work unless you have a really flexible job, unless you're a consultant. But yeah, so it's just, you definitely have to understand that there's going to be a cap in regards to what you can do when you are juggling the both, but you have to understand that I have to get that boat as close to the dock as possible so that I can make that leap from my job to my business. Awesome. You have to be very strategic about it.
Well, real quick, Cal, before you what's the name of your business? What does your business do?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me see the logo here. It's called Take Now Delivery. So Take Now Restaurant Delivery. Our website is takenowdelivery.com. That's a shameless plug. Like I said, we're a restaurant delivery service. I started this company in 2011. Actually, it's kind of funny, from my family business. My parents have a seafood delivery business in South Carolina. I spent years working in their business, growing up and stuff. I wanted to become an entrepreneur, which is why I actually didn't want to pursue the route of becoming a doctor, because I was actually more driven to become an entrepreneur in that route. And I wanted to, knowing what I knew about delivery, I definitely want to get into that business, but I didn't want to deal with seafood, fresh seafood. So, I saw a need for, a restaurant delivery option, because there weren't any. When I started this business 10 years ago, there were no other delivery options. You only had pizza or Chinese as a option. I wanted people the option to have as many restaurants as they could to order from. So fortunately, I got out, again, go back before about that pushback that you sometimes get from people. I'm a young African-American man, going to restaurants, asking them to let me take their food out of the restaurant. Here in the South, that was definitely not an easy sell. Yeah. And then I'm telling them to give me their food at a discount. Yeah. So I'm telling them, give me their food at a discount, and I'm going to take your food out of the restaurant. And you're going to trust me because you don't know who I am, but you're going to trust me. And you've never heard of food delivery before either, but, so you can imagine the looks and the pushback I used to get. Yeah. So, been fortunate to grow. We have close to about 200 restaurants now. Platform that we work with. So, so again, it was all baby steps. People, 10 years ago, it didn't seem like a good idea. It was a foreign idea to everybody. Now it seems like the most obvious idea out there. And that's why I mentioned earlier, for younger people, you have to go deaf, because you best believe I definitely heard a lot of things along the way. Especially when it comes to food delivery, I definitely had heard some naysayers when it comes to this. But, fortunately, I went deaf to those comments from people. And, now, we're growing. We're at it on restaurants. And, I'm definitely glad that I took that step, because, it is, I'm not going to say it's easy, because I do have a growing business. And, I do have, this pandemic has definitely made life more interesting when it comes to work too. But fortunately, I knew years ago that I needed to have a system in place, and I always worked with that with that in mind. And now here we are, and things operate with the business how it needs to, and I'm able to still maintain, my employment and I guess my job career as well. So yeah.
Oh man, brother. Oof, man, yeah. So many gems in your story, man, that resonate with me, and I'm sure resonate with our listeners, because the resilience, the determination, the focus, and one key thing that I'm starting to see too is two things. You had a system, and you had, but the system came out of a purpose. It's like you said, the goals and the purpose that I had led me to keep me on that path. It's like I'm taking the time to learn what it is that I want to do, how I want to do it. Like, say your parents was key, another influence. Your parents had a business, but you said, I want to do this, but not seafood. So the bomb. I'm sure it is. Coming from South Carolina, I'm sure it is awesome.
They have some very good seafood, but I just couldn't deal with cleaning it and gutting it and smells. I was just like, I was done. So yeah, that would be. So
I understand. So let me ask you this thing, because I read an article not too long ago where it said about the delivery business now during the pandemic. You have your business, you do food, you do laundry. I assume, I believe, when I researched.
Okay. Yep.
That affected, like you being an entrepreneur and having to, like you said, it's been interesting, but they said that the delivery industry has definitely boomed since the pandemic, because all we've been doing is like ordering out. Like, I haven't been ordering out as much, but like to cook, but I have ordered out a few times. I've had service done for me. So how has that affected your business as far as like just the scaling of it, man? Because it went from like going out one day to literally like within a week almost, or within the next day, everybody should just start ordering stuff.
Yeah. So again, it's about being about preparation and being prepared for the opportunity. So we saw it. For us as a company, clearly we have competition. But for us as a company, we had always been very strategic in regards to how we promoted ourselves. I knew years ago there was going to be competition. So we were always very specific about the type of service we provided. And I always knew that one of the best ways, seeing my family business, seeing my parents run their business, I always knew relationships were always going to be the key to viability and long-term success. So when we reached this pandemic, a lot of the restaurant partners that, for the most part, delivery before the pandemic was an afterthought. Now it's became their primary means of viability to keeping the doors open. So really they are reaching out. They are trying to talk to us. They are trying to understand, like, hey, what can we do? And they felt comfortable still continuing a relationship with my company, and we are able to add on more restaurants because they know that Takeout has always throughout the years done things to help their business grow. Even if we didn't have to. I'm not going to go into all the details of what we've done, but So that's definitely one of the things, it's definitely interesting about it. I would say back in early 2020, I do offer, my company does offer laundry delivery. We actually offer COVID-19 laundry delivery now, to some of the universities. So I didn't know, so before 2020, we was diving into laundry because we was doing some things with some of the large employers here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And, but, I didn't know in the year that last year that there was going to be a connection between my microbiology background and delivery. People always ask, well, how does the microbiologist get into delivery? I said, well, called COVID-19 now, I guess, because, going out now, so, universities and stuff, they're doing isolation for their students, quarantining, those students, they're going to be in quarantine for 2 weeks at a time. So we go up to universities, we establish relationships with them, and we handle their laundering for them. I being a microbiologist, public health background, I definitely understand how to keep people safe, and I know procedures and processes to put in place to where we can effectively do that. So that background. So little did I know 10 years ago when I started this company, that hey, my microbiology experience, my education, my background would actually have a direct impact to actually my delivery. And actually give us a new opportunity, which did not plan for us. So, you can have plans, but you have to be flexible. Little did I know this pandemic pop up that we will actually create another avenue of COVID-19 laundry delivery that we were able to just easily walk right into, with some universities around here. And then in addition to that, we're still providing service to our restaurants, when it comes to the food delivery side of things as well. Because, I talk to my restaurants, I talk to them about their practices and stuff like that. Because again, these restaurant owners don't know anything about a virus and stuff like that. So, so it's very helpful for the owner of a delivery service to come in and be like, hey, listen, I can talk to you about this. What are you guys doing here? Blah, 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 blah. Say, this is what we've done. This is how I can help your business out from, when it comes to how you're going to allow people to dine safely. Like how you mentioned earlier, how you're going to allow people to dine safely, what are we going to do when it comes to technology? I made sure to invest in technology to, make sure our platform was user-friendly, because we are getting a lot more consumers now, that are starting to use our service, that need to use our service. So I want to make sure that experience was great. So it's really, again, like you mentioned before, it's about, so it's always about having that system, that process in place and having a target goal and preparing for it, because you don't know how it's going to look when it comes. But it's going to come, and it's going to come very fast and very hard. You have to prepare for it. So, that's definitely how it's been for us. So, yeah.
Okay, but bro. Thank you for sharing that, because I was thinking like, wow, with the pandemic and you being a small business owner, but not really, because you've been doing it for 10 going into 11 years. So it's just like the delivery thing has been a huge component of this pandemic and has really helped to keep people sane. I mean, it really has, giving people a legitimate reason to be able to like get things done and feed their families and like on hands, like people who do delivery, like I'm here in New York, I've even with some of my adult students, they've been doing delivery and been able to like keep money in their pocket and keep the bills and things like that. So, it's allowed, another industry to flourish, that was seen as kind of, like you said, was seen as kind of like, well, we'll get to that, when we get to that. But like long term, like, okay, in some years, this is about to be a major thing, right? With it's just a huge thing. And then like how you connected your science background into that is like, you and your sister, amazing, man. Just like
appreciate it. Well, I think she would say I got it from her. So but we're just trying to do what we can. So I mean, I'm thankful to have like I said, my sister, like Judy, and even my other sisters and my parents and people in the community, who really took the time to invest in myself. And that's something I'm trying to do as I'm moving along in my career. I'm trying to make sure that lower level microbiologists, I invest in them, and mentor where I can. And then even with outside in the community as well, I'm taking up time to really trying to make sure to really build up. I'm really interested in helping build up strong men. But really giving them a foundation, to really move forward, into their manhood at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's, definitely not by accident. Definitely, there's some specific things that happen along the way. I definitely feel grateful for that, and I grateful I have a sister who is as annoying as Trudy, who pushed me into a science. Yeah.
James, thank you. I applaud your efforts, brother. I really do. We're going to wrap it up with the final few questions because I know your time is valuable. But again, tying it into COVID-19 because we're still in it. We're in the tail end of it. And like you said, a new variant coming out. I think information coming out now in regards to these states starting to open up because they're getting cabin fever. I think the more we reiterate this information on how serious COVID still is, I think it's beneficial. So we just got like just a couple more questions.
All right.
We would like to get your input on that, and then we'll end it. We talked a lot about COVID. We talked about a lot about the concern about the vaccine. We talked about how dangerous it is. We talked about the mask. So what resources can you provide people to find relevant info on COVID-19 prevention? Like we know we're preventing, but what resources can you provide? Is there a specific website that they can go to or a specific company that they can go to get these resources to help them, like, you know, things of that nature relevant to the PPE stations and whatever else?
I got you, yeah. So I always encourage people to always go to their local public health website for their county and their district. You need to understand what's happening at a community level because, you know, we're all experiencing this in different ways. You know, I know you guys are in different parts of the country. You know, I'm down here in North Carolina. You know, so what's happening here is going to be totally different what's happening up wherever you guys are. And, you know, that's the first line of defense. You want to understand there because like we mentioned earlier about schools and stuff, you want to know what schools are opening up and stuff like that, how that's looking, you know, what's happening within the states, you know, how are they funding, you know, the schools when it comes to PPE and stuff like that, you know, if, you know, say you have children in schools and stuff. And, you know, what is the state reopening plan? Because you want to know where can you go? Like, you know, KAYODE, you mentioned earlier about like the restaurants and stuff like that. You know, North Carolina, you know, we are semi-open with restaurants, but across the board in South Carolina, they're fully open with restaurants. So you know, for myself, I need to understand like, okay, if, you know, I may feel comfortable going to a restaurant in North Carolina, which I don't, but I may feel comfortable going to a restaurant in North Carolina. You know, that may have been part of my routine because I understand what's happening here, you know, in this state. But if I cross the border, which is only a 5-mile drive, if I cross the border into South Carolina, you know, that restaurant could be at 110% capacity. You know, and you know, that's very useful information though. So that's one of the first places I would go to. So, you know, that'd be more at that local level. Just generally speaking, if you want to understand what's happening, you know, in the national, you know, the CDC's website's always a very good website. They have a weekly tracker that helps you understand the case numbers and things like that. You know, that's always a great resource. You know, so I always encourage, you know, so if you want to know what's happening with, you know, the country itself, that's always good information to know. And of course, if you want to know globally, you always got the World Health Organization, you know, website to follow. You know, that's always a good one. You know, so I mean, I think those are just some of the general sites, but I always tell people just generally try to, you know, definitely follow your news stations, you know, visit your local community's public health website, you know, follow what your local public health director is doing, because that's going to have more of an impact in your life than what's happening nationally. You know, the stuff that's going on in Texas is not going to hit you, probably not for months or even a year from now. But what's happening across the street from you is going to happen. That's probably going to hit you a lot sooner. So you want to know what's happening, you know, there first. So yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Whew. Oh man. Yeah, I would just say one of my last questions, James, would be two things. How can people contact you if they want to maybe reach out to you, maybe partake in some of your services? And also, why do you think more African Americans are afraid to start businesses? Or if you have just one piece of advice for those who get into business.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, website, takenowdelivery.com. You can always drop a link there, info@takenowdelivery.com. I do obsessively check emails. So I have other people that check, but I do check emails probably too frequently. You know, I'm trying to think, but yeah, so that's probably the direct way. You know, if you're in the North Carolina area and if you want to try my service, or if you're in Charlotte or surrounding areas, you want to try my service, you can always visit our website, takenowdelivery.com. You know, if somebody does have a question, they can definitely feel free to, you know, they can always shoot me an email. sjhanna2085@gmail.com. I have to find what my Instagram is because I don't know my Instagram handle. But yeah, so, there's definitely 2 ways of contacting me. When it comes to just starting a business, so you can't be afraid to fail. There's a lot of, I think, as I'm learning, as I'm going through this business, and I talk to people who do want to start businesses, everyone's always thinks about the fear, the failure, the fear of failure always seems to jump into people's minds first. And, again, as somebody who has lived off of an idea, I mean, essentially this business was an idea. It's very scary to try to feed yourself off an idea that you had in your head. You can't look at it from that perspective. You can't look at it from a scarcity mindset. You have to look at it from the abundance mindset. You have to say, listen, I think this service is of value. If you're like, for myself, I rely on data to build up my confidence. You have to understand, you have to feed into yourself what it is. You have to feed yourself with whatever information you need, or whatever, whatever information you need to help establish the confidence for you to get out there. For myself, it's data. So I know if I look at the numbers and I say this and the other, and I can look at it and I say, okay, as I plot this out, okay, if I can follow the system, or I can put together a system, then I should get this result. I don't know if I will, but I should get the result. There's no guarantee of it, but I should. So, you have to take the time to really feed in yourself and really establish that knowledge set. Because I think a lot of people, they're fearful of that failure because they don't have no knowledge. They're just saying, like, I'm gonna start a business and this business might fail. Well, you may actually see that, actually how many, you may not need as many people to, as you may think you need to help your business become a viable business. Or you may not, you just don't know till you actually try. And I always say, the great thing about this country, it's very easy to start a business, and you don't have to go file an LLC and then have a business plan and stuff like that and prove to somebody before they'll actually incorporate your business. You can just literally, pay a couple $100 and you have an LLC, and you can let it sit there and you can just test the waters as is, feed yourself with information, along the way, and really go from there. I definitely understand because, for us as African Americans, we really don't have that safety net. I think for a lot of groups, they have a lot of the family, they're able to build that wealth. Because I think you guys may be aware that, the average African-American family only has $17,000 worth of wealth. Average Caucasian family has over $100-something thousand worth of wealth. Home ownership amongst African-Americans is low. Opportunities to capital is very low, very hard to come by, for African-Americans. So all these things do feed into it. And that's why I say, you may have to make that uncomfortable decision and say, I may have to work a job. I have to work, I've worked 3 jobs before, at one time. I mean, so you see me smiling here. There was a time in my life I worked 3 jobs, just to try.
We know that life.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you really believe what you're doing or what you want, or the goal, the vision that you have, if you really believe in it, you need to sell out in it. You just need to, in some way, some fashion or another. And, so, I mean, I would think, really just don't look at it from a scarcity mindset. There is an abundance of opportunities here within this country. Even like I said, I started this business 10 years ago. There was no competition when it came to restaurant delivery. I knew 10 years ago that I live in America, that there's going to be competition one day. And, I knew that I needed to make sure I prepare myself for it, but I knew that I'm still going to operate abundantly and that we still can compete. And, fortunately, we still have been able to compete. Definitely within our local market, and I'm not trying to compete nationally with nobody, so that's not a concern to me. But we're doing what we need to do here, and I'm taking care of home. So I'll just say for others, as you start to look into that path of entrepreneurship, just understand that there's more out there. If you're willing to go out there and seek the information, there's actually people who are willing to help you out and mentor you when it comes to your business idea, which, that's one of the great things. My father put me in touch with a local nonprofit organization that does help mentor businesses as they get started. So that's a piece of advice he gave me. And I use that literally just to understand how to write a business plan. Then I use that, from here, you see what I'm saying? So it was always stepwise from there. And I would say just try. I mean, just give it a shot. I mean, I know that seems Pollyanna, but really, it just really is.
Sometimes it's not as complicated as it seems. Just take that first step. That's all you got.
Keep life simple. Keep life simple.
Keep life simple. One thing I want to add to that, James, is I heard this analogy. I forget where. Is you can't have one foot on the ground and another foot in the plane and expect to go. You know, you can't have at the same time. You're either on the ground or you're either on the plane. You can't.
Exactly.
You can't be in both places.
Or you're going to be off-centered. You're going to be off-centered. Yeah.
James, thank you so much. You gave the final word right there. Kyle, I have nothing else to add. James gave us more than enough time.
Right.
Yes, so I told you I can talk about stuff, so I can talk.
Yeah, man. No, you got a lot to share, man. Got a lot to share.
We appreciate
I appreciate you guys' time. Appreciate KAYODE and appreciate Kyle for your time today. Definitely enjoy this. If you want to talk again, let me know. I can talk again. So, hopefully next time if we get to talk, we can talk after the pandemic has.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. That'll be our part 2.
Right, part 2 of 2.
So yeah.
All right. So with that, we're gonna end this conversation. Thank you, y'all. We usually do an end where we do peace at the end. So on the count of 1, 2, 3, peace.